Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for joining this live stream, and in this live chat I'd like to talk about my experiences in visiting the United States, but visiting particularly California. This was primarily, in fact, it was always on business. I've never had a vacation there. It's always been business. And I've visited the United States many times, and could drive around LA without a map, or San Francisco and Silicon Valley without a map, and around Boston and Austin and Dallas and all that. So I've been all over the place in the US, but my first visit to the US took in California, or LA, and San Francisco. So it was and I was, I think, 23 at the time, and they had to send someone over to the US to do some work, which involved a lot of sort of pounding the pavements and pounding the sidewalks. So they kind of no one really wanted to do it. They thought it was a young guy's gig, and I just happened to be in that department, and I happened to speak a bit of Spanish, not well. So they, given that there had to be a trip down to Mexico, they said, "All right, then, well, you can go." So off I went, and so there I was, and I was affected, I guess, by any other non sort of not American person. So like anyone from outside of the United States, I had this image of California that was Beach Boys, Frankie Avalon, the Mouseketeers, and it was very much an image that was created because of American export of American culture through movies and TV programs and the like. So California appeared to be nothing but one big beach with lots of suntanned people on there. Venice Beach was sort of supposed to be some place where the hottest chicks in the universe were going to be, and that sort of thing. And of course, it's very different when you get there, or certainly doesn't live up to the exported image. But nonetheless, it was. I remember the first time that I went, the people in the travel section of the company I was working in, they fucked up pretty bad, and they got some package deal because I was a pretty junior sort of guy, so they weren't sending me first class. Not back then. I was going in discount coach and on the plane, and they got some package deal to put me in some shitbox hotel. So I ended up going to a hotel where I think I was the only white guy in the entire hotel, other than the hotel manager, perhaps. So it didn't look good when I arrived. I thought, I'm not so sure about this, and sure enough, it was that night. There was all these screams and carries on from the parking lots outside. There were shots fired, and I thought, holy crap, police sirens just seemed on all the time. And I didn't get much sleep. And early in the morning, maybe, I don't know, 5 o'clock, there was a knock on the door, and there was quite a husky voice, which didn't seem white, demanded that I open the door, or they were going to come in, and so I opened the door, and the shock that they had, there was a very large black woman there with two very burly black guys, and they were, I guess, looking for people who'd say, one person had booked in, but then they brought the whole family along and hadn't paid, or something like that. So they really didn't know what to do when they saw me. I think I might have been the only white guy who'd ever been in that hotel. but anyway, I then I went down to the restaurant, and again, I was the only white guy in the restaurant. So it was kind of weird. It didn't bother me too much. I was in another country, and so what? So I sat down. But it's interesting listening to the conversations all around me. And again, there was only black people there, and the way that the children spoke to their parents, and it looks like it was some people vacationing, I guess, at the time. And so one guy was saying he was going to be put in charge of the photocopier at the place where he worked, and that was a serious promotion, and so on. But after those people moved on, and I was kind of waiting to meet somebody, and so there was a young black guy with his half Hispanic black girlfriend, and who looked maybe was a parole officer or something, given the way it was going. But the black guy, he was young. I guess he'd be 18 or 19. He was going to study mechanics, and I ain't gonna lick Whitey's boots no more. And then he was talking that sort of way. And every utterance he made was how much he hated Whitey, and he seemed like he was on the verge of exploding with rage and anger and about what exactly. I didn't sort of quite work that out, but he's going to a community college that's being paid for by white taxes. He's getting all sorts of allowances and financial support, again paid for by white taxes. Yet he's got a problem. Whitey is terrible, and I ain't going to lick Whitey's boots no more. I mean, for goodness sakes. So this was one small snapshot of LA. But getting away from that, as soon as I got away from that, I was getting around to down around Orange County and Huntington Beach and Laguna del Rey and all around there. Some nice place, nice areas. I was meeting some nice people, and it started to live up to its down on that Pacific Coast Highway around there. Seemed to live up to its the imagery that we get or got overseas at the time. But it seemed like, other than East LA and some of the parts around there, it seemed like a very nice place. I moved. I only stayed one night at that hotel. Thankfully, I moved to another one. There was some Hispanic staff, say, just cleaning the rooms and so on. And if you had a bit of a problem if say you wanted the towels changed, and I had to sort of go to my Spanish, asking for doya and all that sort of thing. But they, other than that, most of the middle management certainly was white, and there wasn't much in the way of Hispanics, and even down around the beach area, Venice Beach, and down that way, and around the boulevards there was some interesting folks, and clearly there was a bit of a hippie culture there and channeling Jim Morrison and that sort of stuff. But they were, it was pretty much a wide area. There were, a few black people around, not very many. There were some Hispanics, but again, not very many. It would have been, I don't know, certainly 3/4 plus white, if not more. And not that I was particularly taking notes at the time. The fixation with race really only started to come years later, and not something that I ever really bought into or cared about. Certainly not as much as the propagandists do, anyway. So wherever I went in California, and say going to San Francisco again, hardly any black people in San Francisco that I saw. It was a nice place, and there were some nice people. Scott McKenzie, gentle people there. Maybe it wasn't quite that gentle, but certainly it was a nice place, and you could walk around and nice restaurants, and if I was on my own and walking along, sometimes I'd be going into a restaurant, and people at another table or white people would say, "Hey, are you visiting from say?" And they'd invite me to join them at their table. It was that sort of place. It was a nice place and friendly people. So I quite enjoyed. California, it seemed clean enough and tidy enough. Certainly no dirtier than any other city that, Western major city that I'd been into. And so I quite liked it and thought it was a nice place to shop and to eat and to visit, and a great place to do business. And I always had a very high opinion of American business people. The people at the Apex really knew their shit, and it showed. And you could go through complex issues with them, and they would follow it all the way and give me a lot of help too, and give me some pointers. I was just a young punk kid at the time. Also, going around what probably didn't really have the title back then, but soon was to get it, of Silicon Valley, and you could go around these little industrial estates there and talk to people, light industrial estates, and just talk to people in these little cubicle offices. And there were a couple of young guy engineers in there, and they were inventing the future. They were inventing technology that in the years to come would be changing the world. And you could knock on the door and just say, "Hey guys," and they would invite you in and tell you about what they were doing. They were enthusiastic, they were bright, they were intelligent, they were focused. They were young guys, going places with great ideas. Not every one of them would become a Microsoft or something. But a lot of them did very well, and they were always impressive. I always came away thinking, wow, these are smart guys. I went to another. I remember meeting an organisation, or the beginnings of one. They just started out, and they'd started off with a small office doing nothing, and in 5 years they were $100 million company. And I remember this is in the days before mobile phones. I remember sitting on a stack of phone books because their office furniture hadn't arrived, and they were telling me about the technology they were developing. And these were exciting times. California was an exciting place, I thought, to be, and I thought a great place. And maybe not, again, quite what the movies have cracked it up to be, but certainly, if one company I was working for was going to say, well, we'll move you to the United States. And I remember going around Sausalito, just in the northern part of the San Francisco Bay there, looking at real estate, because that was, there was going to be a good chance that the company would open up an office on the West Coast there and moved me over there. So I was looking around there. It's a great place. There was, but you could go to a lot of places in the United States back then. And I remember going around Philadelphia, some great coffee shops there. New York, great coffee shops and pizza places, and great Italian food, and there was some fantastic restaurants around there. Again, a great. New York is a little bit different than the people on the West Coast, but nonetheless, there were some very pleasant people that I met, and on planes and so on. So that was the beginning, sort of my beginning of my time in the United States. And again, I went many times, and but you could see the change coming, in the hotels. And we're talking sort of as I became more senior in the companies I was in, I could stay at better hotels and stop traveling coach. Go down. It's just like a 14-hour flight from Sydney to fucking LA. So I was glad when I didn't have to go coach on that. But I could see the difference even at the better hotels, where more and more of the staff were becoming Spanish or Hispanic and didn't really speak English. And again, I could get around that with my Spanish, but not, sometimes you just, my Spanish just wasn't quite good enough to convey the message, given it that their Spanish was sort of, quite basic. I assume they're illiterate in their own language, these people, so they can talk it but not read or write it and that sort of stuff. So you could only give them direct verbal instructions, and it had to be done so succinctly and so clearly that your command of Spanish needed to be good enough to do that, and mine wasn't. But anyway, scusi por favor, no hay el banco. Yeah, you see, you could ask. I could get it. My Spanish is rusty now, but I could ask for things for the room if I need to. But more and more of the staff were becoming Hispanic, and I noticed that change going on. Similarly, I started to notice it around places like, say, Venice Beach, or down some of the shopping centres in Huntington Beach Boulevard in LA. I'm talking about there. And so you'd see, or Manhattan Beach Boulevard, right? So you'd see these changes occurring, that more and more what had been almost 100% white areas, we're seeing more and more black and Hispanic people, working in the shops or in the coffee shops, or just around generally. And after a few years, I suppose by, say, I don't know, maybe 1990, 1991, somewhere around there, I could go to, again, let's pick Venice Beach as an example, and there'd be gangs or groups of black guys running around with ghetto blasters, the dark glasses on, and being seemed to be rather menacing from what I could see, but nonetheless, you just try and look past that. So, I'm a visitor here. But the proportion of non-whites that were in, say, Venice Beach was increasing fairly rapidly, whether it be Hispanic or more black people. I don't know whether you call that equality of outcome or equity or whatever, but it just seemed to be more pronounced as time went on. Again, not that I particularly cared one way or another. It wasn't my country, and it was just an observation. So I'd go, but I noticed this change. But with the change, I noticed there was more crime. So suddenly, on along these places, there was a much bigger police presence, and sirens were constantly being heard. There were chases of chasing after people that were doing muggings and thefts and so on. And one case in New York, for example, we walk along with a group of people, and there's a guy behind, and he's talking to somebody, a black guy, and it just seemed they were having a chat. I looked back. Turns out it was a mugging while he's walking along, and we didn't even realise it. So these are the sort of things that began to occur more and more, and even to the point, and certainly by the early 1990s, I would go out from the hotel. I think I'll go to a restaurant rather than eat a hotel. I'll maybe go to a restaurant tonight, that sort of thing. And the guy on the desk would say, "Well, where are you going?" And so, well, I think I'll just go down. No, take a taxi. Do not walk. I recommend, sir, that you have a meal in the hotel, or there's a restaurant right across the road there. Go there, but do not walk here. Do not go. And this sort of thing. This is at night, and see, well, wow, that's pretty heavy when someone's saying don't go there, and saying it with almost a pleading sort of passion in the voice. So this was how America was certainly changing as I was observing. Now, I'm a pretty sort of fit guy, so I'm not easily intimidated. But nonetheless, what can you do if someone pulls out a weapon or something? So I started to become more and more cautious, and for good reason. I seem to be reading in the papers about the crime levels and the murders downtown and the muggings and this, that, and the next thing. So I had to be sort of mindful that I had a job to do. I didn't need to get injured, or I didn't need to have to give depositions to police and hang around or something. I had to sort of go to different cities, do my job. So I needed to be a little prudent about where I went and the sort of folks I got tangled up with. But you could see that downhill sort of thing, cities becoming dirtier, more drug addicts, more people, more street people, more third world peasants on the street, and these sorts of things, and just and something I took a wrong turn off the Santa Ana freeway going into LA one day, and I was down on the street level, coming off the ramp, going down the ramp onto the street level. And I was suddenly in an area that was right in the middle of East LA, the Vernon and all that thing where the riots are. People, just a few weeks later, people got killed. So I remember going down and thinking, holy shit, and desperately looking for the ramp, to get back up. And I had to stop and make a phone call, because again, this is pre-mobile phone days here. Well, no, you could get them. They were just horrendously expensive, and the company wouldn't pay it. But I had to make a phone, so I stopped at a Karl Barks, and in East LA, the call box has been absolutely trashed. I mean, there's barely anything to it, but the telephone works. So I made the call, and then just coming up from behind in a vacant block of land, there were these mixture of sort of Hispanic and what appeared to be half Hispanic black guys, and they ringed around, made a ring around the phone booth, and I thought, no, this looks like trouble here, and they're going to. This could go to a bad place. And I spoke enough Spanish, I understood enough Spanish, but I could hear what they were saying. And they kind of said, look, this guy doesn't sound like he's from around here. And they they sort of reached the conclusion that, hey, it's not he's not a part of our fight. He's not a local guy. He's not part of our shit. So we'll let him go. Now, I was dressed in a sharp suit. I'd hired quite an expensive car. So, I looked like I probably had something that was worth stealing. But for whatever the reason, they decided that they weren't going to bother with me. So they disappeared as quickly as they'd come. And I was looking about, hey, am I gonna make it back to the car in one piece and get away from here? It was that heavy. So those are the sort of changes, and that was again in East LA, and so it's quite specific to the area. You wouldn't see that just generally in, I don't know, on the beach in Orange County or something like that. So. But these were the things, and it just went downhill and downhill and downhill. And each time I visited, there was more drug addicts on the street. There was more crime. There was more violence. And you could almost sense an increasing tension in the air that the locals maybe didn't necessarily see. But coming from outside, even coming in every few months, I'd say, well, gee, this seems to be going downhill here from the last time I was here, which may have only been a month or two ago. But you could sort of sense that tension and that downhill slide. And the more and more Hispanics were coming in, and the more and more attempt at social equity, this ideological social equity, the worse it seemed to get, because instead of curing or remedying any sense of injustice, it simply whetted appetites for give me more, give me more, give me more. How do I know I'm not being oppressed unless you give me everything? And that mentality was permeating certainly the minorities as I saw it. So that's a little bit about my time in visiting the United States, and to my view as an outsider, a once great country, the pinnacle of human achievement in so many ways, is going downhill at a rate of knots, and that's a very sad thing to see. That's my take anyway. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.